Yeah, you went up.
There you go.
All right, good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel. The recording of this meeting will be available on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel within 24 hours. Please note that tonight we did post an agenda and we did have to modify the Zoom link. So separately, I am in that initial Zoom meeting in case anyone joins in. So that way we can refer them over to this meeting. We also posted the update on the town website with the new link, and we made sure that the agendas had in pretty bold letters that the agenda needed to have a revised Zoom link in it and that the updated agenda has it. So the agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Public participation is encouraged, and public comments may be welcomed during committee member discussions at the discretion of the chair. So again, we do try to encourage members of the public who choose to attend to participate. So I again wanted to share with the members tonight that Mr. Gray is the host of tonight's meeting. I'm having some struggles with Zoom on my end, so I'm joining through the web browser. Unfortunately, I cannot share my screen because of me joining through the web browser. So tonight's agenda should be pretty straightforward. So our intent tonight is to discuss a scope of work for a design team. Again, I'm having trouble seeing everyone. I can only see right now Mr. Gray or whoever the speakers are. So I can only see myself and Mr. Gray. However, where we left off, which was several months ago, we had gone to the select board with a presentation on what we identified previously as the hybrid concept, which is now the concept. And where we're at now is to move that forward. We identify that we're going to need some funds to assist us with doing that. So the goal tonight is to work with the board to figure out kind of what needs to be in this scope. So that way we're procuring the vendor that meets our needs. And with that, I will turn to the board to begin this conversation of what we need to do at this point. So feel free to just jump in.
Greg's coming in.
Excellent.
Also, point of order, Mr. Jeffries, I suggest that being a Zoom meeting, we all confirm that we're here.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. With this being a Zoom meeting, we do need to do a roll call. And so I am here, Michael Ray Jeffries, and we all can kind of just go down the line and identify ourselves and our names.
Tom Gray, I represent the Finance Committee.
Matthew Allison, Planning Board.
Okay. Dave Blatt, citizen at large.
Christina Masitis, citizen at large.
Greg Roy, citizen at large.
All right. Good to see everyone. I wish I could see you guys when we're not just speaking, because that's like part of the features of Zoom that we all get used to. So again, the purpose tonight is to kind of finalize these key needs, those key areas that we're looking for when it comes to the scope. If I can start, Greg, with you, since I'm looking at you already. I know that you've worked on other committees, as have several other members. How I read of where we're at is somewhat in the schematic design phase of trying to formulate the plan for what this would look like. So if you wouldn't mind kicking off the conversations on what are those key things we need to make sure in this scope of work.
Okay. I'll give it my all. So are you the way I understand your question is trying to formulate
I think you may have missed that first minute, Greg, actually, as I think about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
So we had just started the meeting, we had waited a little bit just to give you time to join in. So what I prefaced it by saying was I first mentioned the Zoom challenges that I'm having. And then the other part of this is that where we left off as a committee was a couple months ago, we presented to the select board what we had identified previously as a hybrid concept, which is now the concept. And
Yeah.
so now we need to move that concept forward. And we know that we are going to need some professional support to do that. And so we do have a request in front of the select board for ARPA funds. And so it's finalizing what is that schematic design,
All right.
or, really what is that full scope that we're seeking to procure, so that way we can find ourselves hopefully at the spring town meeting with the warrant article.
Okay, I see. Okay, I get it. So we need to define then the scope of work that we're going to be looking for from the professionals,
Correct.
so that we can put a dollar associated with what we need to ask at town meeting.
Correct.
Yeah. So my view on that is, since you've kindly given me the floor, we need to decide how big of a bite we want to bite off here. My memory is that we were at the point of we basically told the select board, I think my memory is that we told the select board that the next steps were to put together more or less a roadmap with the different steps that we think we should take to make this transition, to get this ball rolling, and then to finish it. So I guess I may have missed a meeting or two. I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't.
No, you probably
So
have.
that was the last meeting that we had. Okay, then that's fine. I'm not passing any judgment. Believe me. So I think the where we are is still there. Is to really solidify what the steps are for the various, and I think to define several different projects, and if we want to put a scope of work and put that dollar number on advancing the first stage of that to schematic design, I think that's what you're asking. But I feel like we still need to, and maybe we're just about there and we just need to finalize it, but I feel like we still need to come up with that sort of formalized roadmap, like, 2024, we think we're doing that. We're looking to ask for this. We think that project's going to take 2 years. I don't know, whatever. 2027, then we're going to be asking for this, roughly, maybe not the dollar amount, but we're going to be looking for this kind of project. And then, that kind of roadmap, that's kind of where my brain is on this process. And because I feel like when we go and ask the town for this money, they're going to want to see the full roadmap. Now, having said that, I think it was one of the members of the select board, it might have been Mr. Alonso, that said, there's going to be a group of people in town that's going to just want to do something. And there's going to be another group of people in town that want to have the whole picture before they vote on anything, right? So it's one of those situations where we're probably in a little bit of a catch-22 there, but I feel like the sentiment has existed for a while in this group, and I think there's support of the select board for at least having an overall approach to where we want to land at the final step, and what the process will be to get there before we go and do it. So I think, Mr. Chair, that it's two parts. We first should develop that roadmap, and then we can talk about the detailed specifics of scope in the first stage for the specific dollar amount ask at town meeting.
Yep.
And we may need, now, when you say we're looking for ARPA, what are we specifically asking for?
Yeah, so we have a placeholder for $225,000 request that I put before the select board, so that way we could get some professional assistance to move the process along.
Okay.
So we're speaking the same language. I think that what I was anticipating for us to go, the direction that I was anticipating us to go after that last meeting was, I think we've sorted through ourselves about as much as we can sort through without having some that professional support. Really, I think what we need are renderings. I think the key thing is that we need to have something for people to look at, some renderings of these concepts. And then I think we had decided the approach we're going to take, exactly what you said, was kind of phasing this out, that we needed to kind of work through those phases and figure out the best approach to kind of get there. But I think we need to have a in-state rendering of what we're trying to get to. And I think that's something I know that I want to achieve by getting the professional support.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree. As much as I hate to spend more money, I feel like doing a good job at preparing that plan, that roadmap that I'm talking about, and assessing exactly what we need in, to develop that first stage, in the ask. I feel like we probably need I don't think it has to be mega bucks, but I think we probably need some support. That might be a good thing to ask for ARPA, so that we can at least have a little bit of seed money, if you will, to get us over the hump with respect to that. Because I think we've done the task of taking those projects and the square footages and applying whatever it was, $500 a square foot, whatever that. I think we did that, and I think we, with fear and trepidation, presented some of those numbers to the select board 2 months ago. But that's really the best we can do at this point. We can't really get any more granular until we have, specific plans, and a professional would be required for that.
All right, and now I want to turn to whoever else wants to jump in next. I know I put you on the spot, Greg, to get this going. Who would like
That's
to jump
okay.
in?
Happens all the time. I'm going to turn my video off because I'm having persistent connectivity problems with Zoom. It freezes on me, so don't take it personally. But I am going to turn my video off. But I'll be here.
All right, thank you, Greg. All right, who wants to hit this next?
I can go. I'll just say that I agree that we do need a roadmap, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, in a timeline. I think that we need to get that looked at. And then I think the next, phase 1, phase 2, we'd probably like to get some numbers. And as we go along, and I think maybe the earlier phases we need better, spend the most time, but we do need to get some other numbers for whatever the phases are, the final ones, because I think, yes, people might go, yeah, we want to do phase 1, but I think the thing we're presenting is that this is a whole global look at our entire portfolio of buildings, and this is what we plan to do. So phase 1 is starting now, and we should, when we ask for that money, we'll ask for that money. But, I think people will be asking, well, what about phase 5? What about phase 4? What kind of numbers are we talking about? Are we talking 50 million, 70 million? So we need to get at least some kind of numbers. Now, I know we do have some general numbers, as Greg was saying, but I think having them look at that and just, giving a little bit more detail on the latter phases would be good.
All right. Anyone next want to chime in?
My understanding is that there was a new emergency. We had like 24 leaks in the TC Passios. Is that correct, Mr. Jeffries?
I don't know the number of leaks, and I don't know if it's an emergency, but we know that the building is leaking and that it's getting worse.
I thought the town manager distributed an email or something about that, or maybe it was a discussion.
Yeah, I do recall Mr. Allison seeing an email recently about there being significant water that came into the building recently. Yes.
Okay, so anyways, that leads me to my question here is we're basically, the hybrid concept is the concept that we're going with, right?
Yes.
And that involves 4 buildings, the Passios, Town Hall, Ritter, and Brooks, right?
Correct.
So how official is this? I mean, is this in cast in stone? This is the concept that we're going to follow through with?
I think that in our 2 meetings ago, we came to an agreement on the hybrid concept, as I recall.
I guess the question is, do we need buy-in from town meeting, or can we just go ahead and say that we're gonna put together plans for renovation of 3, maybe 4 buildings?
I think that we do, Matt, and I think that that's kind of where we're leading to, is that in order to, what we have available to us now is ARPA funding. And so that is money that can help get us to, the spring town meeting in which we can make this presentation to the town about this full plan. So I'm expecting the board to, us to work, if we, the key thing is, the select board is making decisions on ARPA, more decisions on ARPA tomorrow. And I want to make sure that, number one, that if the board decides to fund the request, that we are able to act quickly to start that process, because it's going to take us, 2 to 3 months to, hopefully less, but we should estimate it's going to take 2 months to procure that professional support. And, so that gives us 60 days to kind of work through these phases before we have that professional on hand. And then it's really identifying what we need from that professional to help us get to spring town meeting, and making sure that we're procuring, that the scope of work that we are initially going out to bid on is fully encompassing. So that's, I think, when I think I kind of know the answer to the question from my own lens, but I want to make sure that I'm incorporating all the different points in this.
Okay, appreciate it. So I guess with that in mind, then we would have 3 different phases. And we would need to decide, is TC Passios, is Town Hall, or is the Ritter Building phase 1, 2, or 3? My recommendation was TC Passios should be phase 1. And I don't really think at this point, we've had plenty of design professionals telling us what we can do for how much money, and this way and that way, and what blah, blah, blah. We also have a new facilities director right now.
Yep.
Maybe replacement of the TC Passios roof could be something that was handled maybe with ARPA funds, maybe somewhere other way, but in-house, like as a facilities upgrade or building maintenance, without having to go through a design professional team, and only update the roof of the portion that we don't want to demolish at the end of the transition period. And baby steps. I mean, we finally have a point in time, and we put our foot down and we said, this is what we want. And then they've gone to the select board and they said, okay, well, we agree with you. This is what we want. Let's just start working on buildings and stop spending money on design professionals trying to tell us how much it's going to cost to make a mansion. Let's fix the roof. Let's get the money to fix the roof on the stuff that we're going to reuse. That's my opinion. But then Town Hall and Brooks House, Town Hall and Ritter would be phase 2, and which one would be phase 3? Maybe design professionals to coordinate the 3, but yeah, let's stop the bleeding, which is actually leaking into the building that's useful.
So what I've gathered from the select board, and I think that as you may know, I've pushed for us getting a new roof on that building right away. That even if we don't have a plan, that we know that anything is going to involve continuing to use the roof or use the building, and that we need to move in that direction. I have been unsuccessful in convincing a majority of the select board that is an appropriate path forward. I think that the feedback has been that this needs to be part of a bigger plan. And that, if we're going to spend, because we estimate it's going to be over $1 million, and that it's too hard of a sell to ask people to spend $1 million on a building that doesn't have a full plan for its use. Again, Matt, I disagree. I think it's an easy sell to go to the public and say, we need $1 million to make sure that we can preserve a building that's going to cost us $30 million to replace. To me, that's an easy sell. But again, has not been the direction that the board has taken. And my understanding is, I don't want to put the blame on the select board. I don't think anyone's to blame, but I know the select board's been part of that conversation. And I also understand that the request has come before the capital planning committee as well. And for the same reason, that they're looking for us to come to them with this plan that includes this roof work. I don't disagree with your approach. I think that separating out the roof work as an immediate need, unrelated to all this other stuff, is something that we can do. And that if we had to make a couple patches down the line for some roof penetrations, that we can do that too. But that overall, it stops the roof from leaking. It stops the further deterioration of the building. I think the intent with a design professional, though, is, we're going to have to come before the town to seek some funding, serious money. There's likely going to need to be an override vote, and I think we need to have visuals that tell people what they're getting for that money. And there also needs to be kind of a clear plan. And I think even if we take the approach that we're going to phase this out, that we're going to take it incrementally, and that seems to be the path that we're taking, I don't see how unless we have someone from the public who's really good at CAD, who's willing to volunteer their time to work through this and design all this stuff for us, I don't see a way to get there without professional help.
I'm really good at CAD. I think he's pretty good at CAD. I'm pretty sure that there's other people. I know Damon McQuaid. I don't know what he uses for software, but he might be willing to volunteer some time. I'm sick of spending $250,000 every time we want to make a new study on a building and that we want to spend $30 million on, but we don't really want to spend $30 million. It's irritating. That's all. Thank you.
Dave, Christina?
Well, I guess I'll go since I'm off mute. I don't disagree with I agree with the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I guess my biggest thing, and I'm still battling this going forward, is I keep thinking about what's next for the schools. Because my fear is that we can get to phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 get knocked off because, all of a sudden the schools need $40 million for a renovation or something else. So I believe in the original scope of this committee, and that was to consolidate town offices. I believe that can be done with I believe that can be done fairly inexpensive and simply at the Ritter Building. I believe we already have part of those drawings and part of those sketches done through one of the TAP A things. And I'd like to see that being phase 1. Get that done and then look at what happens with phase 2, phase 3 going forward. Because I'm not exactly my problem is I'm not exactly sold with the building departments with the town offices, because in all our meetings we had with the school committee, they kept on saying how they needed to be located in the same location as ACE. And I think they said that at least with ACE. And I don't think I'm not comfortable with ACE being in town hall per se. So my feeling is I understand what you're saying about the roof of Passios. My feeling is I know in my heart of hearts with the school committee, I know that as soon as we say we're going to do some work on Passios, they're going to say, whoa, we're going to use that lot to build a new school or something to that effect. But I do feel that the biggest thing is to get town offices together and look to, doing something with, I look at that as town offices, then town hall, and then, Passios. If you want to do a Band-Aid to the roof, I'll agree to a Band-Aid to the roof, but I don't know how much I want to put into that building until the schools decide. And I still believe Brooks House should be a town bonfire with a demonstration by the fire department of how well they can put out a building and contain a fire. So that's, I think, the best use for Brooks House. And we can use it as a fundraiser. How's that, guys? Okay. I guess that thing is an eyesore. It's a waste of time. And there's not, I will not vote for a dime to be put into that building. That is utterly, nobody wants it. Nobody. And we shouldn't want it either at this point. Okay. I'm off the soapbox.
That's how you really feel, though.
Yeah, exactly. I'm telling you, bonfire, baby, town bonfire. Well, we could do a raffle to see. We could do a raffle to see how much time it's going to take to burn down. We could, rate of the flames, the whole thing.
I think it may be a little too close to other structures.
That's what the fire department's going to show you how well they can contain a fire.
Christina.
So I am pretty aligned with Dave. I agree that I just reread the plan and I love the fact that the Brooks house is gone. That to me was the biggest eyesore, and like using the TCP for school behind it and going to the library with my son, that overgrowth of a jungle next to it, that could also be added to the bonfire because nobody maintains that property whatsoever. So seeing that gone and just having a green space there for the schools or like extra parking, whatever, it'll be nice. So I'm happy to see that go. I struggle because I go back and forth on, do we fix TC Pastios because I've been in there to drop my son off and it's pretty rough. Or do we turn around and say the Ritter building? And going with the original charter, I do think the Ritter building has to be done first because that's the most important thing. And I know if the Ritter building gets done first, that's going to be our biggest obstacle because everyone has their near and dear feelings to town hall. So whether that gets done second or third, it's going to be a push because no one wants to see that sit. And like Dave said, I don't know if you guys remember, like 2 years ago, probably at this point, the superintendent came in and was like, if we move like the ELC, the early learning, or the before school and after school out of TCP, I'm not going to have those programs anymore. So I could see the school being very gung ho, but I do like the idea of transitioning, getting part of it. So maybe that like is a discussion later down the road, but knowing that 3 out of the 4 are going to be settled in an easy manner. I agree with that.
Okay. My own opinion, thank you, Christina. My own opinion is I'm in agreement with our approach with Ritter being kind of phase 1, in my opinion. I agree with Matt in that I think we need to get a roof on the TC Passios, but I don't think we need to do too much else there in the interim. I think that if we're going to use that building to, well, I have a couple of thoughts. Let me step back. I work with the superintendent on different things. Her and I interact frequently in my role on the select board. I can't help but feel that some of the best of intentions are a bit too idealistic. And what I mean by that is, many communities struggle with space. It's an ongoing thing. It's not just communities, the federal government, governments in general, they struggle with space. And we're never going to have the ideal. And that's not, we're not going to get there. And I think that that's just real. We're not getting to the ideal. If we had some billionaire funding us, we can get to the ideal, but we don't. I have a hard time accepting that the trade-off of is making programs unavailable. I would argue that we need to do all that we can do to continue to preserve the services that are provided, and that we need to think creatively to get them done. I've also had conversations with the school committee, and to share kind of what I've shared with them. When I went to their meeting this spring, I was pretty direct in saying, from my own lens, the problem that we have is not what to do with old buildings, it's what to do with old schools. And that, when we're talking about the primary building, we're talking about TC Passios. That if those buildings never entered into the fray, that if they just weren't here, that we would be able to have a far simpler conversation about what to do to best support town government and the municipal needs of the town. But instead, we're talking about it in the context of these old buildings. And so it seems imperative that while these buildings are under the care and custody of the school committee, that they don't allow them to get to such a great point of deterioration, such that when they turn them over to the town, they are turned over in need of millions of dollars of work just to keep going. And that we are all in a better position if they maintain their buildings to the best that they can, so that way, if or when they turn them over to the town, that we can more easily figure out something to do with them. And I gave as an example Turkey Hill. And from my lens, if we were dealing with Turkey Hill instead of TC Passios or instead of the old primary school, to me, the ability to turn Turkey Hill into all the things we need it to be is clear as day, in my opinion. We could fit the town offices in there. We could fit the school offices in there. We could fit an after-school program in there. We could have a commercial kitchen, and all that stuff could be ready to go tomorrow, right? And so that building would be the ideal type of building to have this conundrum with. The reality is that we can't just step in and take Turkey Hill over, that there's a lot of things that goes into getting those matching funds to build another school. And so there is a direct need to keep that building going for a bit longer. And so the school committee is working on what they need to do to get the building to last for another 10 years. They did meet with me or gave me some information at the beginning of the summer that drew a price tag of about $14 million. And that was some of their back of the napkin best guesses based on information that they had. They came up with a figure that was about $14 million. And that for $14 million that they could get likely another 10 years out of the building. It complicates the conversation because I think that what we end up doing if we don't make decisions today, we end up hoping that at some future point down the line that we'll be able to make better decisions. And my fear is that we will be no better equipped in 10 years than we are now. And that TC Passios, that Turkey Hill isn't the building that we're talking about, that the building we're talking about is TC Passios. So I hear the concerns about the school's requests. I'm hoping that I can continue to work with the schools and them coming up with a more cost-effective solution that gets more usage out of that building and that primes that building likely to be, a need for, if in the designs that we come up with, we don't solve the problem for what to do with an after-school program, that, the town has more land available to build schools on. And that if in 10 years, the after-school program, the Boys and Girls Club, all that transitions into a Turkey Hill, that to me is a great plan or great idea. But I don't think we need to plan it today. I just think we need to have the space available for that potential use when it comes up. So I hope I've answered those concerns in that area. But I think in the immediate, as we think about this limited scope of work, Matt, I'm going to take you up on your offer. And I think that we can kind of do two things at once. ARPA provides a unique opportunity to provide funding, make it available for these types of purposes. It comes from the federal taxpayer, likely taxpayers from the future, and it doesn't directly hit the tax base in Lunenburg today. I wouldn't call it free money. No money is free, but it's money that we can utilize to best meet our needs. I think it would be wise to minimize the amount of funds that we expend going forward, because once that money is allocated, we basically have to spend it before the end of next year, or commit it by the end of next year, and we'll have until 2026 to actually expend the money. So if we can get that ARPA allocation, to me, that works in our best interest and best needs. Just a different funding source, because I don't think that we're going to be able to get another penny going to the town and asking the taxpayers in Lunenburg for another dollar related to this project, unless it's to get things building. Greg?
Yeah, I forget.
I didn't realize when your hand went up.
I forget what I was going to say. No, I think that I think I agree with what Matt Allison said, as well as I think what you were saying, Mr. Jeffries. The only thing I would say about the latest conversation here, is that I think the schools, I know Brian isn't here tonight, but I think the school committee told us that, I think directly, that they wanted us to lead on this issue.
Yes.
That they were holding off on their formal plans for TCP, not TCP, Turkey Hill, until they had a bona fide plan from us.
Correct.
So I get that that's in the discussion, but I kind of feel like we need to, I think just about everybody now has told us that they're looking for us to come up with something. And I think, just to take it, now I remember what I was going to say. I think that's why the phasing that we come up with is important, because, at the end of the day, as Matt said, we got to take this, and we need buy-in from town meeting. Like, we can't, it's not like we can just go and build buildings and renovate buildings without town meeting support. At the end of the day, it's probably going to be a multi-phase project over many years. And there's probably going to be several opportunities for town meeting to have to get in and vote for various, to actually fund the construction of various phases. And while it's frustrating to put together a plan, perhaps a multi-phased, multi-year plan, only to have town meeting, say in phase 3, not want to spend the 13.63 million that we're estimating might cost to renovate TCP. At the end of the day, I think we kind of have to trust the town meeting is going to get it right. That at that time in 2028 or 2030, whenever it is that we come up with our phase 3, and we're staring down the barrel of needing to do a new school. And by the way, at that point, the school may have already advanced plans and maybe has already worked with the MSBA to do their funding sources and design schematics on that front. That at that point, the town will have new information and will have to act accordingly. The town meeting will have to act accordingly. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that this process that this committee is putting together, is very important in that master planning effort. But at the end of the day, it is going to come together with the various other things that we have financial commitments for in town, and it's going to have to blend in, and it's going to have to make sense with all those things. But this is important enough where the school committee, a very important board that oversees half of the town's budget and resources, has said to us, they're looking for us to put a plan together first. So, I mean, I think that we should be, that we should honor that, and that we should be cognizant of that fact and put together the phasing plan that acknowledges that perhaps that we should put the important stuff first. So to Dave's point, I do feel like getting town hall offices done is a real important thing. But having said that, I also do not believe we should leave a building, however many, 50,000 square feet of building over there with a leaky roof, that's used. I mean, I feel like, that's a building we have that has uses that we should be taking care of that. So we may not do it all. We may not want to put, $1 million into the entire roof if we really think there's a good opportunity that we might be taking some of it down. But I do feel like we ought to be able to find a way, to prepare the roof that we have, because we're going to need that for transition space, if nothing else. And we can't move town employees into a transition space with a leaky roof. It's just not really good form. So, I mean, I feel like, I know it's a lot of money. No one wants to put money after bad, but at the end of the day, it is a step that I feel like we need to do.
Yep. Christina.
Sorry, I was going to ask, but I think Greg just answered it. Are we still going to, as part of this plan, say what, we plan to do with the town offices while certain buildings are under construction? Because if that was the case, then we would have to I guess we're allowed to decide what we want, but are we allowed to say, in phase 3, we're tearing down half of TCP, but in phase 1, we need to, step 1, phase 1 is put a new roof to be able to transition everybody out of Ritter.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing to remember is that, sorry, Christina, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, it's okay.
But it just popped into my head that, I don't think we're pulling any punches in the fact that when it comes time to renovate the TCP, we are going to try to do it in a cost-effective manner and not have to do, I can't remember, but we don't want to do seismic upgrades to the building. So and that relates to the percentage of the building that you renovate. So it would be short-sighted at this point to take down a portion of the building only to then have to renovate 100% of what's left and get triggered into doing upgrades that we otherwise wouldn't have to be doing if we had the whole building there. So, I mean, I think we really need to think through that too. Because that was a big cost implication with the the whole scale renovation of TCP that we came up with.
Yeah. And you know, one of the good things that I think helps us be a little more primed than maybe committees in the past is that we do have a major anniversary for the town happening in 5 more years from now, in which we hit our 300th anniversary, and that's going to be August of 2028. And so we do have, if we think Springtown meeting and money getting approved, I mean, we do have time to be able to deliver to the town in time for its 300th anniversary. If we phase this appropriately, a Ritter in Town Hall. And if we end up at a point where we get a new roof on TC Passios and we say, hey, phase 1 is Ritter building renovations and new town hall construction. And then everyone, temporarily we displace those employees who work out of Ritter. They're located somewhere else in a building that doesn't have a leaky roof. That work gets done. The whole workforce thing gets relocated. Then we work on shoring up Old Town Hall. I'm throwing this out as an example. We should work on shoring up Old Town Hall, getting it to being a meeting house, preserving the second floor. Then if we kind of outline a 4-phase process and then get to phase 4 and say, what, on TC Passios, Turkey Hill's coming up as now being closer to being available, and it makes more sense now to turn that into a community building and to tear down TC Passios and build a new school there. That if we land there, there would be, in my lens, no problem in us adjusting, because that could be something that we could adjust to. But it's a matter of getting these things moving and getting these really major buildings moving. And I do think that taking the Ritter Town Hall approach is likely the phasing that earlier, in my opinion, may be a good approach. But I don't want to get too off topic here. It sounds as if we're all in agreement that that an ARPA request that's directed towards kind of these renderings, kind of toward that more granular focus on what these first phases may cost, what they're going to look like, that working with organic resources provided by Mr. Allison, and you were volunteered in that too, Mr. Roy, and you, Greg, that using our organic resources, that we can kind of cut down on some costs here, and ultimately I think it doesn't hurt us to have money set aside, and if we identify that we only need a portion of this, it just we can reuse that money for something else.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman. You were talking about your discussion with the school committee and the $14 million that, a soft number, but to renovate Turkey Hill. And you said that would give them an extra 10 years of life of that building. Is that from my understanding, is that because we gave them the plan? We said to the select board, hey, here's the hybrid plan. Everybody agreed it's a good one. And in that hybrid plan, there was no tearing down of TCP or all that. So they said, oh, okay, so we're stuck with Turkey Hill. Is that why they made their plans, or at least their thoughts of a plan?
Yeah, so I want to add some clarification, perhaps. Thank you for that question, Mr. Gray. No, two separate things. I think the conversation that was had with the school committee that I had with them, and I think 14 million, it's a lot of money that does become an obstacle for us. So the school committee has committed that they're going to wait in line, and they've said that several times. We're going to wait in line. We know this is first. We're going to come next. I think that the conversation that was had separately was also along the lines of, well, and I think in my own head, I think my dollar amount was probably less than 2 million. But it was, what are those things that they can do for short money that helps that building exist? So that way, if they look to vacate it in 10 years, that they're not vacating a building that needs $20 million of work to keep going. That they're vacating a building that can easily be transitioned to another use that doesn't have these major deficiencies. For example, when we took receipt of the primary school, it had a leaking roof. When we and all the mechanicals were outdated and old. When we took receipt of the TC Passios building, it had a leaking roof. It had known issues. and they have been worsened by not having any kind of plans in place. So really, it was kind of advising them to be in a better footing, and that these situations that we're in as a town are predictable and foreseeable, and that we should not go into a new building with Turkey Hill that's the same way. I mean, I know this is a recorded broadcast meeting, but what I was trying to relay to them essentially was that this problem that we're having is made worse because of the focus on the new and the shiny without the focus on what are we going to do with what we have left over. And that we need to look at buildings as being a very expensive asset to the town that should be maintained and managed, even if the purpose is beyond a school. And so it really was trying to get them to focus on building maintenance and not getting into a pattern of deferred maintenance with the expectation that they were going to be leaving it anyway. Because at the end of the day, the town still has to pay for it. And I was also encouraging them to maximize any funding that they can get from the state to assist them, that could help shore up that building in the interim as well. Does that answer your question, Mr. Gray?
Yes, I guess it does. I just, to me, one of the ultimate issue is that, let's say, and we do all this work on these buildings and they decide they're going to build a new Turkey Hill, and they come up and we don't have the money to do that because we'd have too much debt.
Yeah.
So that to me is ultimately the, we can say, and this is just a weird thing about the way towns work. You got one group over here and one group over there, but at the end, we have one bottom line, and
Yep.
we have one, so it is a concern that if they come back and we're not, and we've spent more money than, we spent our money, built all the things that we built, and then they can't build what they need.
Yeah. I think that we can be mindful of that. I mean, but I also think, let's not short sight ourselves of our ability to resolve tomorrow's problems tomorrow. That's not saying let's not do things today mindful of tomorrow, but I mean, I know that Dave separately, Green Communities Task Force has been exploring the idea of, solar panels on the old town dump, and there's a lot of work to be done there. But if I can kind of just highlight the why I really want that to happen. If we can find ourselves in a situation where we can take 30 acres, 40 acres of town property and generate real money from it, and then commit that money to help out with our building needs, I have to believe that we will be in a better position in 10 years from now to be able to manage our capital expenses if we have a better source of revenue that's not just the taxpayer. That's my motivation, is I know that we have these extremely high costs, and I know that solar fields make a lot of money. And so it's how do we tap into that using our own brownfields? One of the efforts that I've made in that regard, and I'm not going to pat myself too heavily because it's not just me, but I brought the issue of brownfield funding up to our state legislatures, to different people in different agencies who have to do with brownfield funding, and have said, why have you not, why is there a requirement that this really only goes to cities? What about the towns? What about us? People who have these brownfields, but we can't even touch this developmental money because we're not eligible for it. And so there was a change in law last fall that did expand that funding to go to towns, and previously it wasn't. So I think that there's more work that needs to be done there. But I am hoping and trusting, Tom, that we're going to find another source of revenue here to help offset these costs. All right. I think that we are at a pretty clear point here for me in terms of being able to go back to the select board, kind of summarize and identify what this funding could be used for, and also to open the door that, hey, if we don't hit all these things that we need, if we're able to offset some of these costs, that we will, kind of look at those organic resources. So what I will have prepared for our next meeting is I will work with Heather to look at the last time we went out to procure on this, taking that RFP, the scope, the actual written scope, modifying it so that way for our next meeting we can all review that and make sure that we're not that we're in line. And I think the way to do it is likely to do some alternatives. You know, when you do the bidding, the public bidding, you kind of put in that generalized scope, and then you ask, hey, what will it cost if we got service B or service C as well? So that way, when we go to hire, that if we're able to meet the organically some of these costs, it just can be something that we don't need to procure for. And so at our next meeting, I can have that prepared, and we can also start this conversation in earnest about what these phases should look like. So that way, when we go to, bring on this help, if we bring it on, we can kind of have a really fine-tuned criteria of, what these phases are and how do we get good cost estimates for them with escalators. Does that sound like a fair approach?
I mean, sounds fair. I just think what's unfair is that the schools are waiting for us instead of vice versa. But that's, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, earlier, the idea of Turkey Hill sitting there and, they decide to go in one direction, which is not to do Turkey Hill and to do something new. It's going to be, that's like the worst scenario that we can ever see in this town. Because as you mentioned, that's a perfect building that could function for at least 4 different groups, at the 5 different groups at the same time, as is. No big modifications or anything like that. So I think it's disingenuous that the school committee is waiting for us when they're the ones dictating most of the room most of the stuff that we need. But anyway, that's just one guy's opinion.
Yeah, I think one thing that I know, Dave, that we had looked into was, what if they kind of pump up the school and then we turn it over to the town? But there's the time requirements that come with once they take that state money, they have to hold them to that building for X amount of years.
Right.
I know that becomes a prohibition for them. It will be hopefully our next meeting will have Brian to represent the views of the school committee better. I know anyone watching this at home is like, they got that wrong, they got this wrong, but I mean, we're a committee and we work together and we're going to meet again. And so, if there were any misstatements tonight, I feel confident that I didn't make any intentionally or out of ignorance, and that anything that was stated tonight that was incorrect will be corrected. All right. So it sounds like any other comments tonight on this topic, because this really is our only topic besides committing to our next meeting schedule. All right. Next meeting schedule. So we traditionally we're meeting on the first and third Monday of each month. Does that still work for everyone? And if so, that would put our next meeting at the 18th of September because of the holiday on the 4th. Does that work for all? And keep in mind, I can't see you, so you do have to comment.
Yes, works for Tom.
Works for me.
All right.
Dave, I can't say it's too far in advance, but I'll try to make it. As long as it's Zoom, I can do it from the road. So
Currently the 18th is open for me, for Greg.
All right. Matt?
Okay.
He said yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll plan for that. We'll plan to meet each other on the 18th, and I'll, in the meantime, try to work on securing some funding that way we can utilize. And then again, at our next meeting, we'll finalize what that scope should be. All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Let me just look at the agenda. All right. I did not put public comments at the end of the meeting, but I did put them at the beginning and never called for them. So are there any public comments this evening from anyone?
I'll make a public comment. It's good to see everybody. I hope everyone's having a good summer. I can't believe it's already the end of August. But anyway, I hope everybody's having a good summer. I'm looking forward to getting this process going again. I get it. It's been a 2023 for Michael Ray Jeffries has not been a fun year. No, certainly no, no judgment there, buddy. None of us would want to be in your shoes for the last 8 months. So anyway, but I'm looking forward to getting it going, and I feel like we have a good plan, and I feel like we can. I feel like we could sell it, for lack of a better word. I feel like we have a plan here that that we can put some that can get some legs, and that that's encouraging. So I hope we can keep the pedal to the metal here, and I think some professional funding, and I really hope, Michael Ray, that we can limit that scope. I really hope we can find a way to do this for not a lot of money. I'm not an architectural draftsman. I can't do I can't do pretty pictures. I could draw straight lines and streets and stuff, but I really hope we can limit it and really just do what's basic needed to present and to present this overall picture to the town, and so I mean I hope that there's a way to do that.
All right. Any other public comments tonight? All right, so between now and next meeting, Matt, I will definitely meet up with you and Greg. You should expect to hear from me as well. And it is good to see everyone. I thank you for those comments. This year has been more challenging than I thought even possible as a member of the select board. Certainly had no intimation that something like what we just went through this year was even possible. And so, yeah, I think we all know it's been a challenging year, but it's a team effort to get out of things. And so, I have to give a lot of credit to my fellow members of the select board, to the town manager, and to all the many people who have given many words of encouragement. I know people probably don't see me at the store too much these days because I actively avoid going between 7:30 and 9:30 because it's hard to run in and just grab something without being stopped several times. But it is encouraging to hear the positive feedback that many people have said, and thank you, Greg. It has been a challenging year. We're not through it yet. All right, we're going to conclude tonight. Seeing no other public comments, this has to be a roll call vote. I'm going to call by name. So first, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, that is a second. And roll call vote. Mr. Gray.
Yes, aye.
Christina.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Allison.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. The time is 7:03. All right, you guys have a good night. We'll see each other on the 18th.
Good night.
Ciao.
Aye.